joining us from her Skype account in her kitchen in Israel, Nealy Fischer. Nealy, it's so good to have you on the show.
So great to be here. I wish I was in person, but one day soon.
You know what? That day will come. Meanwhile, you spend time in Israel, you spend time in Montana, and a lot of the inspiration you have in the kitchen comes from your travels, all of the things you've experienced.
Yeah, we go around the world. I've got 4 kids, and so we satisfy their beef in Montana and their Mediterranean vegetables in Israel. We lived in Asia for a long time, so we make lots of curries and stuff. So it's all about being flexible and versatile.
Which is why, you know, I can't believe I'm so late to appreciating the sheet pan. It's not as if I didn't grow up with one in my parents' kitchen, and I have, I think, several in my own. But this light bulb moment nearly went off in my head when I started exploring new and adventurous things to cook on the sheet pan. You have this sunny side mushroom bake. I had not made eggs on a sheet pan until I tried it. You're hooked once you do it. So let's get to your recipe because I love the idea of it.
Awesome. Well, this recipe started in my cookbook, and it's usually made in a casserole pan. But when you wanted to do sheet pans, I'm like, this is the perfect recipe for a sheet pan. It's in one dish. You don't have to use a lot of ingredients. We've got our sauteed mushrooms already ready. This was originally a quiche, by the way, where I was going to put it all together in a big casserole pan and then ended up just layering it. And it came out so much more perfect.
I love that fact because originally when I saw this recipe, it sounds like a traditional quiche, but you pivoted, showed that flexibility that your fans love, and you're putting it all in the sheet pan. So we have our sauteed onions, our sauteed mushrooms, the foundation, if you will, for this sheet pan.
Exactly. So all we're going to do is just place all the sauteed vegetables on the pan. And by the way, another little flexible tip of mine is I always make extra sauteed veggies because I like sneaking them into my kids' food. And so I'll double this batch and then I'll use it in omelets or in a bolognese or anything, really.
I love that. Now, I'm a little behind you because I've got my canola spray here. I'm spraying. Do you spray it down a little bit?
Yeah, spray the pan first. You don't, by the way, you don't really need to spray a sheet pan if you have sauce. But because an egg is going to be cracked on here and it might hit a piece of the aluminum, we don't want it to stick.
Gotcha.
So yeah, my pan was already greased and I just put my veggies on top.
So I've got my beautiful onions and my mushrooms that I made extra when I was cooking something else the other night. Okay.
Perfect. And I should say, by the way, we're using a half sheet pan, but you could, I mean, you could use a quarter sheet. You could just use a little bit less mushrooms. This is the kind of recipe that once you get the hang of it and the little rules like veggies and cheese and egg, you could use any quantity you want or any size you want.
Again, I love you point that out because people always assume you're cooking for a whole family. Sometimes your family is just you, or sometimes your family may not want it, and you want to cook a small portion for yourself while they eat something else.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so then you've got your spinach.
I have it.
Perfect. You could also, by the way, if you were sauteing your vegetables and you wanted to add the spinach, this is just so pretty, and and it'll taste even a little fresher because you'll see in the end that we get some little fresh pieces of spinach. So then you just kind of cover the parts of your pan that are a little empty, and yours is looking awesome.
Got it. Seasoning-wise, do you layer your seasoning here? Because I know that we've already sauteed our mushrooms and our onions, and I'm sure seasoned those in the pan. What about the spinach? Just leave it as is?
Yeah, I would leave the spinach. The mushrooms are seasoned, and we'll season it on. We'll season everything in the end. The cheese will have some salt, so it'll be good, I think. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's move on to the tomatoes. So you've got your slice.
I've got my tomato here. I don't like slicing on camera because I have the worst technique. That is something I'm still getting used to. But nevertheless, 2 slices of tomatoes, and you place them over the spinach that you have.
Yeah, just make them look
throw
pretty.
Them out? Okay.
Kind of.
All right. Is there a specific place that you have to have your tomatoes or placement of the tomatoes?
Nah, just make it look fun and pretty. It's, you know, the whole sheet pan craze, I think, is just, it's about this kind of rustic but sort of perfect-ish looking thing. And I think what makes it feel so perfect is that it's so imperfect.
Love it. Okay.
And so, you know, however.
All right, so I've got my cheese here. What's your cheese of preference for this?
I'm using mozzarella, but again, use whatever you want. The other day I used some cheddar. Grated is just going to be the easiest. So.
Okay, so we're really doubling down on this flexibility thing here. So I've got the mozzarella. You can use cheddar, whatever your cheese of choice. We're sprinkling over our mixture.
Yeah, and by the way, one of the things, I don't know if you find this, but sometimes I have to look back at my recipe because I'm like, I think I might have forgotten something. We have some basil, by the way, totally optional.
Okay.
I happen to have had some in my garden. It just adds another little flavor. I'm just going to break mine up with my hands and kind of just sprinkle it on top. There's no rule to when the basil gets added, so you just add it right in at the end.
I love fresh basil. Okay. Now, I love this tip that you gave. I'm not the best at cracking eggs here, but you say put the egg inside of a little dish before placing it on the sheet pan, which keeps the yolk intact. Ease that on top. Add a few. Got one there. And put one more. I really did once crack eggs with one hand, but my game is off here. All righty, one more. Egg intact, yolk intact. Put it in the oven at 350 for about 15 minutes until the eggs are set and the yolk and the egg white is as beautiful as voila, I love it. Nealy, thank you so much. By the way, Nealy's cookbook, Food You Want for the Life You Crave, is available now where books are sold, and everyone in the audience is getting a digital copy, and you can find today's recipe on TamronHallShow.com.